afternoon and welcome to this year's Buchan Group Symposium focused on asset enhancement. My name is Joanne Lone, Associate at the Buchan Group, and I am honoured to guide you through this afternoon's proceedings. If I could please ask for phones to be turned on to silent, please, and I'd like to draw your attention to the door prize. We have a couple of bottles of wine to give away, so please make sure that you place your business cards in the bowl at the next break. We are pleased to bring you a broad line of speakers this afternoon who will provide valuable insight into unlocking the value of assets through understanding the changing needs of the building owners and customers and the value of refurbishment, renovation, adaptation, technology and future-proofing. This afternoon, we will hear about major asset management from the customer's perspective, the role of technology in enhancing buildings and the user's experience, followed by some case studies on how renovations and refurbishments have reimagined assets around the globe. The format today will be two 20-minute presentations, followed by a question and answer time. We will then take a short break and then have two further presentations and conclude the symposium with question and answer time again. I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker for this afternoon, Josef Seidler, Regional General Manager of Development at Vicinity Centres. Josef joined Vicinity Centres in late 2016 and is heading the ongoing master plan development for the iconic Chadstone Shopping Centre. In 2007, Josef transitioned into the world of integrated resorts, holding senior development roles with Crown Resorts and Star Entertainment. Notable projects include the stage redevelopment of Crown Melbourne and Crown Sydney Casino and Hotel. At Star Entertainment, Josef led an Australian development portfolio which included the master planning and design management for the winning bid for Queen's Wharf, Brisbane. Please join me in welcoming Josef to the stage.
Hi everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to come and chat to you today. Firstly, just wanted to say to Buchan, they are tremendous partners of our business and have given my team since I joined amazing support. I've put a lot of them under the pump over the last week getting ready for some presentations, so that I couldn't say thank you in a bigger way than up here today. Thanks guys. As you can imagine from my background, my presentation will focus on consumer-centric projects and really in that consumption space, whether it be in retail or in food and beverage or entertainment. Customers and connecting people with places is a bit of a passion of mine, so I'm very pleased to be able to talk about that today. My presentation and the Equium presentation to follow, you'll see some really elegant touch points around the amazing thinking that Equium are doing in terms of connecting with customers and the touch points that they're going to tell you about as well. I thought I might just start with a little bit about Vicinity. Many people do know, some people don't know who we are in the industry, but the company was formed through the merger of Federation Centres and Novian a little under 2 years ago. We're a top 30 ASX listed business and the second largest REIT with Australian-owned assets. We own and manage over $24 billion of retail assets from super regional centres through to neighbourhood centres, as well as owning the majority of the DFO outlets around the country. We've got 9,000 leases in our portfolio and we're the largest landlord for Wesfarmers and the Woolworths Group. In our diverse portfolio, we know that size doesn't determine quality. We really view quality is determined by the market opportunity for each asset and how well the asset services today or can service in the future under transformation the needs of the people in that market. With our success being measured by the centre's ability to attract, grow market share and trading performance and ultimately the profitability of our retailers, which is part of the key measures. So what we need to do is really know our customers, and they being the shoppers, the diners, the tourists, the potential hotel guests in the case of Chadstone, and looking at what experiences we create in the centres and what will resonate with them the most. And if we can create those experiences better than our competitors and do it more consistently, then we'll have created places that people enjoy, they'll repeat visit, and also that they'll share them in real time with their couple of thousand Instagram followers, etc. A couple of observations of my 6 months in a more retail-focused business. And the key thing that stands out for me is globalisation here in Australia. The internationals have moved into Australia with such an energetic spirit, and I think we almost are the tail end of the leading countries to see those global brands emerge here in Australia. And for the customers, the quality that they see in this enhanced experience through the additions of the likes of Zara, Uniqlo, H&M, Sephora, Apple, etc., and the expansion of luxury brands owned by the LVMH group, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy group, the shoppers and the international tourists are really embracing that. And one of the unique things that we see at somewhere like Chadstone is that unless you live in a city that has a mega centre, you land in Australia, you have the opportunity to shop somewhere like this, which has the most amazing array of international flagships. And we did a recent rack-up of every mega centre around the world, and we actually fit into probably the top 5 in terms of the international luxury mix once we complete the sort of the final remixing, if you will, of the Stage 40, the project. And one of the interesting questions around, well, how have the Australian retailers responded? There's a couple of absolutely cracking case examples in my mind. The Cotton On Group, for instance, trading fantastically in Australia as well as their international expansion, 1,600 stores globally. And what's really interesting for us is that with our mixed-use evolution and having A-grade office space, is they're actually not only a retail tenant but also a commercial office tenant having a full floor with it. So we're very pleased to say that we consider our retailers and our office tenants as customers as well. So, image above is a Lego Discovery Centre recently opened at Chadstone. And the favourite thing about this is that all the things that you can't do online, it really informs what bricks and mortar need to be. I guess I'm a bit of an old bricks and mortar kind of guy. I love technology, but I think there's a real partnership between the two, and how we actually understand our customers better, and deliver on a range of new experiences. So. The difference between online shopping and bricks and mortar is really what we need to understand in asset transformation and major redevelopments. So with a lot more bricks and less mortar in these images here, it gives me great inspiration to take out of these little vignettes of mini Melbourne that's been built by the master brick builders at Lego. It talks about places to gather, places to be entertained, and places for young Lego brick builders to practice ideas. That's actually my son, who's 12, who thinks that evolution of the hyper tech savvy person who took the opportunity to play with a box of every Lego wheel type you can imagine to build different size race cars and race them down the Lego ramp. So again, this is an example of activity and stimulation based retail that really is quite unique, and in my mind was so inspirational in understanding where retail and where we as developers of whatever the place is, that there are really unique experiences that, if you find the right mark, are so powerful. A little bit on that fusion between online and retail. So notice there's a shot of the Harris Farm markets and their merchandising in New South Wales. But I think online is part of the journey. You browse, you identify the store, you visit, you touch, you feel, you experience it, and then you transact. I think food presentation and fresh food generally is one of those concepts where you can evolve quite quickly. What I loved about this was these guys were making packed ice beds to put fresh fish on, and you actually wandered effectively through the store. So things weren't behind glass, they were right there in the front. There was the fish guy or the fishmonger behind these packed ice beds serving. So it's some of the best merchandising I've ever seen. And this is I think these guys will be tremendously successful. They're an integrated fresh food catering, and grocery idea up in New South Wales. And I think as we transform assets, the aspiration should really be just to be best in class in whatever sector you're doing. So if you actually want to be famous for fresh food, is do stuff like these guys are doing, which is really just so different and actually so tactile when you experience it. Probably one of my favourite jobs was working at Crown for about 7 years. And during the transformation of this asset, we really changed what was an inward-facing promenade into a building that was opened up to that waterfront experience. And really that was been a decade-long tradition or trend in integrated resorts to turn them from the inside to the out. And the industry was really forced to transform to drive footfall to new uses and experiences. So along the promenade here, they actually used to be, many of them were closed shops, and the old Warner Brothers studio, some people who know the asset from years gone by recall. And now it's a buzzing restaurant and bar precinct, the centre added conferencing, hotels, great day spas, etc. And we really created some magic on that promenade. It's an idyllic setting to dine. It's an idyllic setting to take in the view, but also to enjoy an excursion along Melbourne and that beautiful promenade. So I suppose what we did was reasonably simple. It was fairy lights, it was music, it was taking restaurants and actually just taking them from turned inside, looking into an internal mall, to actually turning them outside to engage with the exterior. I'm I guess a little critical of some of the retail assets around the country where there's beautiful parks right next door to a sub-regional centre or regional centre, and typically assets turn their back on public space and the opportunities to connect greater. So for me, this was one of the really great examples where over a period of time, all of those promenade uses were changed out and really turned into outward-facing scenarios that connected better with people. The old Jupiter's Broadbeach project. So, what was quite unique? Again, this was even more contrived than Crown in that you have a casino built on an island, actually completely faced internally and didn't have any external activation. So back in 2016, we developed the Garden Kitchen Bar project, and just as an example between unprogrammed, that's a shot in the morning of there not being any activation. And then in the evening, moonlight cinema, the rugby on in the lawn. And the really interesting thing about these programmed event spaces is that they just drive excellent footfall to venues. They're inexpensive. It's really about you create the place and then you program it. The buildings can't always do all the heavy lifting. Programming is a really important thing. And I suppose that the piece around connection for me, and it's the title of my presentation around connectivity, it's got nothing to do with the internet. It's actually got to do with developing places and then helping create an emotional connection between people and the place that you've developed or that you program. So during the course of development at Jupiter's, and the place it still probably is covered in cranes and the like, a key part of the transformation to try and assist customers in their wayfinding a place that was Andrew's business there. He's got the front of it covered in cranes at the minute still, I think, was to figure out how do we actually keep the lights on and how do we actually say we're open for business. And generally during major asset transformation or redevelopment, the owners are saying you need to stay open and you need to keep growing by a couple of % every year. So we took the view that we would implement a permanent light projection show. So imagine Vivid or Melbourne White Night. That's actually Jupiter's every night of the week. There's actually effectively a free show that's a lighting projection show. In this case, it's the fireworks piece. So, in my mind, it was one of the ways of saying customers still need to visit while you transform and while you recreate assets. You need to find compelling reasons to keep them coming. New architecture doesn't do that by itself. This is an example of old architecture reimagined through digital projection. So we had a lot of fun with that project. A little bit of boring stuff around cars and buses and connections. I'd probably encourage the group to look at what the government is spending money on. There's a tremendous amount of investment in rail and new stations, etc. And I think there's really an opportunity to understand what's happening in that space and transition your customers or your staff, who might be your customers as well if they're, if you have a mixed-use project and you've got office workers coming and you're selling them something during the day, or your retailers are selling them something through the day, is to make that transition from transport to your place as seamless as possible, and endeavour to make it a little bit of an experience as well. Take a bit of your new place's DNA towards bus stations or the like, or train stations. From a car perspective, I think there's an argument that car parking needs to be reimagined a little bit. Take the hassle tax out of how you get to places. We're going through a little bit of a transformation ourselves where we try to understand that a trolley shop visit for a customer is different, and that being a supermarket shop is different from a specialty shop where you just leave with bags. In a trolley shop, you want a more generous car park so you can actually get to your car with your trolley and return it back, is different from when you leave a car park with a bag of Louis Vuitton goodies. You're far less interested in how you get a trolley to your car. So it's probably just, it's reimagining how you do things and not making one size fits all. Create convenience, I think, is very important. I'm often asked about driverless cars, and from a few anecdotes recently, and one of my colleagues here in the room had a drive of a Tesla yesterday, which just validated in my mind that this technology is coming, it is here. And I think the first opportunities we'll see of it most likely is in the super regional or regional shopping centres and the integrated resort space. So imagine where you need to arrive somewhere that's kind of the front door or the centre to be dropped off, or the integrated resort to be dropped off, and then you hit the auto park function on your car, and it actually goes and parks in a happily nested car park that's not your A-grade parking, that's reserved for customers who don't have driverless cars. But there's actually opportunities to declutter your primary real estate by pushing these driverless technology vehicles to some of your worst car parking, and that car happily returns back when you're ready to depart. So I think we worked out there was a James Bond movie about 15 years ago where Bondy was driving the M7 on his Samsung phone. It would appear to be here right now. So I think there's the opportunity to engage that, and certainly that's the way my mind's approaching some of these new opportunities. Selfie moments. I'm absolutely mad for creating selfie moments for people. The sign on the left is a green wall with a restaurant name on it. I can't tell you the number of people that I saw standing in front of that taking selfie moments, from tourists through to locals, etc. They just felt that this beautiful, vibrant green wall was this amazing opportunity to grab a moment and actually share that. And the one on the right is just an example of some cool graphics. People who eat, or people who love to eat, are always the best people. So you can just imagine, pop-up graphics and the like are amazing ways of connecting with people. They engage with your space better, they share it, and I think it's just one of those nice touch points that customers like to enjoy. You can't have these experiences on the internet, which is fortunate for us as a room full of bricks and mortar people. On to the big stuff, some untested ideas at Queen's Wharf in Brisbane. So this is really a unique example of connections where we, and for those who don't know the project, perhaps I'll just touch on that really quickly around the key metrics. So 1, 2, 3 hotels, a food and beverage precinct with massive outdoor dining terrace, a bridge across the Brisbane River connecting the South Bank area to this site. Gaming floor, etc. in this project was at sort of a lower level in here, and then obviously the city grid and this amazing array of the oldest buildings in Brisbane. So connecting people to this was one of the greatest challenges I think that I've ever faced in a master planning context, and we won't know until 2021 when it opens that all those connections work. But the challenges were this: they were connecting all the different campus uses. So there was also 40,000+ square metres of retail in the overall project. So there was a connection of 3 hotels, 3 residential buildings, the combination of the gaming elements of the development, food and beverage, the whole of the South Bank precinct needing to connect better to this centre, plus all of the CBD streets that we needed to connect in. So it was very much driven from a pedestrian perspective. There's no new freeway ramps built or new roads to connect people into what is a $3 billion project. It was really all about connecting people to the centre. We spent a lot of time thinking about the heritage excursions, that once you arrived at this precinct, how you could interrogate that amazing congregation of Queensland's oldest buildings, as well as some of the Aboriginal, some of the Indigenous storytelling and the like from the riverfront areas. We also needed to connect to a university campus just down here, is how to get 10,000 students to actually really utilise that waterfront area and get them out into public open space areas, and also figure out how to provide food offers that were relevant to so many different customer types that this project connected to. The city footpaths was a really interesting one. You have that amazing backdrop of all of that worker population to make it really easy to pop out of your office building and actually come across and have an experience for your half an hour or 45-minute lunch break, grab some food, get across some life chores in the retail space, etc. I guess the upshot for this project, we took a totally different way of how it was going to be connected. It's not particularly car driven. It was very much driven about how to leverage every bit of footfall through the centre, because footfall is actually the key thing around driving revenue and the success of a project. So you can imagine when we present this sort of material to international tenants who don't quite understand, what's happening in Melbourne and Chadstone, or potential hotel operators that we might be talking to at the moment. This paints a picture for them, but it also certainly helped me and our business understand, where the opportunities lie, and give you a strong sense of the macro conditions and the things that need to be leveraged, whether it be technology, adjacency to universities, or things like the synchrotron if you're in industrial development, etc. I know my presentation is kind of a little customer focused, but I think that the fundamentals, and particularly some of these research elements, I think are really key to most major projects. Going to finish on a little bit of an example of the two paradigms around things that customers love to connect with. So up here is Spice Alley in Sydney, a really tactile, tiny compressed space, but an amazing food and beverage and artisan food and artisan chocolate precinct, which I actually just happened to stumble across the other day, and I thought was really share-worthy around how these guys had created such an amazing vibe in this compressed little space. And I guess I'd like to leave you with a parting thought, and I'll jump from this to global I suppose some of the global scale architecture that we've employed at Chadstone, and that everything in between is relevant. It's just about really asking yourself, some things need to be human scale and tactile, and some things need to be grand and global. The key in my mind is making them iconic and deciding on what you want to be famous for. So if it's an awesome little food precinct, then be famous for that. If it's amazing architecture and clear spanning glass roofs designed in Europe, then make that what you want to be famous for. Thank you.